Hello everybody and welcome back to Juno New Origins, where we've been experimenting a little bit with the flight program, and our current program is very specific. It's not very generic. That's fine. What I want to do right now is I want to continue to work on this. Now you'll see I've made a couple of changes off camera here. I've added in this variable target orbit here, and the way that you do that is you go into variables and then you click create variable, and then you just put in your variable name. So our target orbit is currently going to be 500,000, and this is currently set up to be our like stage controller, and this is set up to be our pitch controller, is the idea. And as you can see here, I did look up the math for the linear interpolation, and this is how this is going to work. So it goes between 90 and 0. However, this needs a small change. We need a clamp in this, because I did a little bit of testing off camera, and I discovered as our target orbit goes up over 500, we have a small problem. Our pitch will start to go down below 0. So we need to actually do a, let's see, we need to do a minimum, or no, we need a maximum. So this is going to be a maximum of 0 and this, like that. So if we do this, that will manage our gravity turn for us with a linear interpolation. So that's absolutely fine. Let's go ahead and save this to craft. And let's put this out in the water, and let's see how this operates. I'm not going to speed through this because we're still in the testing stage of this, and I want to genericize the stage controller. But for right now, this is fine. Now, we still have this shaking problem. This is unrelated to the program. This is entirely related to the craft. I'm not concerned about that right now. So as you can see, we are making our way on upward. The shaking is going to occur. This is just a bug that exists. It's going to make us wobble around quite a lot. It's not great. Okay, eventually it'll smooth out here. As you can see, we're currently going a little retrograde, which is definitely not what I'd prefer, but it's fine. So we're going to smooth out here in a moment. We're crossing 4 kilometers altitude at this moment, and 5 kilometers, and we're going to start smoothing out now. Yeah, there we go. It's smoothing out. Perfect. So that is fine for now, and you can see here we're not quite going straight up. Our current target is not quite straight. Now, I did change this from being every second. It was causing noticeable ticks every second. I made it to be doing this 100 times per second. So this is now checking 100 times per second and running the linear interpolation math at this point. So that should be absolutely fine. You can see our apoapsis is okay. Our target altitude is 500 kilometers at this moment. Now, I very much do want to genericize the outer shell situation, especially with things like this, right? We're carrying a lot of extra weight here. This is pretty inefficient, and I don't know why it drains these differently. We might be able to do some sort of a tank setup. That might be a good thing to do. But for now, we're going to be ditching the outer shell presently. There we go. Outer shell has been dropped. Perfect. So now we're on the inner shell, and we're draining all that fuel on down. Things should go much better, and you can see we are pitching right on over in a fairly smooth fashion. You can see our apoapsis is already quite high here, and we don't have a lot of lateral speed. Now, we could make some alterations to this and go for the apoapsis in some different ways, but for the time being, I feel like this is reasonably okay. So the apoapsis is currently at 250 kilometers, and this is not going to do our orbital insertion for us. This is only the initial takeoff. So that is definitely something to note. Also, we need to turn off the pitch control at a certain point. I just realized that. If we try to change our pitch, it's going to cause us significant problems if we try to do an orbital insertion at this point. So that's absolutely going to be an issue. Okay, so there goes that inner shell. Our apoapsis is currently about 460 kilometers. And as we can see here, our lateral velocity has some distance to go. Our orbital speed going to need to be brought up. That's fine. The real question here is, how's our apoapsis doing? And the answer is we're at about... I didn't plan to run out of fuel in this stage, by the way. So if we run out of fuel in this stage, okay, ready for orbital insertion. So at this point, what we would need to do is we need to come in here, plan a burn at the apoapsis, and this would be all about getting us all the way up over here. Now, we could definitely be more aggressive on that lateral speed there. So this would be something like this, right? And then if we go ahead and sign that up, you can see here, this is immediately going to be changing this every little while, right? If we change this like this, well, it's not changing our heading. It's only changing our pitch. See? It just immediately snaps our pitch back. So we need to turn off that section. So let's pull this on back. That needs to get turned off at this point. So I want to change this from being an on start to being something else entirely. So we need to have this be, let's see, receive message with data. Okay. So on start, and then we need to broadcast message with data. And this message, or actually to craft. I want this to just be to craft, like this. So this message is going to be, I'm going to treat this kind of like a function call. So we're going to call this manage heading, and this data is going to be 1. Okay, so while data equals 1, we're going to do this. So we need to go into here. While data equals 1, we do that. Then we're going to duplicate this guy, and I want to change this to 0, which I think will break this loop. That's the theory. And this should be receive manage heading, like that. So that should break that loop. Now, I kind of want to be a little bit more aggressive on this target orbit. So I'm going to say divided by target orbit times, I'm going to say 0.5. So this is now going to be fully horizontal at 250. That should give us a lot more horizontal or lateral speed at this point. Now, we still don't have this very genericized. That's understood. This is very hyper-specific for our current ship design. So that is absolutely something that we're going to need to change, but that's understood. For the moment, let's save this to craft and give that a test. So we're going to have it very shaky on this takeoff, as usual. It's truly bizarre, but whatever. It doesn't cause us any major issues. But we should now see our gravity turn happen twice as quickly. We're actually going in the correct direction, which is nice. And let's see if our loop gets broken. Hopefully it does. But I'm not sure if that's entirely how this works. This might start up another thread of the loop, essentially, but then that would get instantly broken. So if this doesn't work, we're going to need to try to find a different option. But let's see. Okay, so the shaking is done. That's nice. And now we can just continue to lift this guy on up. We can go to 10x here. Okay. So that boosts us through a significant portion of this burn. We're going to run out of fuel here. And this is a design issue with the rocket. For the time being, I'm not focused on that. For the time being, I'm focused on our launch program and figuring out exactly how that programming system works. So we need to figure out right now how the message system works, and that's the point of this particular launch. So as you can see here, we're definitely gravity turning about twice as quickly. That's good. This guy is apparently coming with us. Okay. Why are you just stuck here, buddy? He's just chilling. Okay. Well, that's not how that's supposed to work. Maybe he'll get shaken free when the inner shell breaks out. Oh, there he goes. Okay. He managed to detach on his own, but that took a little longer than I would have liked, for sure. We should also have a deploy solar panel check, but that's something we could do separately. Okay, so at this time, this is looking relatively decent. We've got ourselves a lot more lateral velocity built up, and that's great. We're going to burn here horizontally, and we're just pushing the apoapsis like this up to 500. That's the idea. So now we're going to have a lot more horizontal speed. That's a much better gravity turn. So that looks great. It's still not a perfect one, I'm sure, but it'll do. And the question is, will this fuel get us to where we need to go? I don't think it will. But it never was going to, and that's fine. Well, I mean, it did last time. It got us to 500, but we were lacking a lot of lateral speed. We went a little too much verticality previously. So that's understood. We're going to continue to push this right on up. Time to apoapsis is increasing. I'm going to have to manually stage this here once we are burned out here, because the program is not programmed to do this. Okay, so I manually staged that, and the question is, if we go through this burn, time to apoapsis is dropping. Let's go into orbital velocity here. Time to apoapsis is now increasing. Okay, this seems pretty reasonable at this point. It's a long burn, but we kind of knew that would be the case. So we're close to 500. This is 75% fuel remaining in the drop tanks. Okay. Okay, ready for orbital insertion. Perfect. So at this point, this should be very, very little to put us into orbit. Now the next question is, did that message that we sent to turn off our loop, did that work? The answer is no, it did not. Okay, so that is understood. We're going to have to do that differently. So I kind of thought that it might work that way. So this is understood. What this ends up doing is this ends up creating a second instance of this, I believe, but the data is then going to be 0, so this while loop is then false. I think what we need to do is we need to set a check down here instead, and instead of broadcasting this, let's get rid of that. Let's do a check here to say if we need greater than or equal to here, and we need to do an if statement. So if orbital apoapsis is greater than or equal to target orbit, then what we need to do is we need to set data to we need to set data to 0 at that point. So that's understood. We need to go to variable, and we need to set variable data to 0. That should break us out of this while loop, and this, I can't click and drag, but this should no longer do anything at that point. Okay, so this is starting up our manage heading, and then the manage heading is itself, oh right, I changed this, it's not 100 times per second. I changed this to be, I was intended to be 60 times per second. I don't know if that's actually 60 times per second, but it should be somewhere around there. So that should stop this loop. That should be absolutely fine, and no problem there. Now, of course, if our fuel is at 0 here, well, we're in this wait until, right? So now what I want to do is I want to wait until Let's see here. Fuel stage. And we would want this to be a mathematical operation. So this would be an equal. Fuel stage equals 0. And then we'd activate the stage, and then we'd wait. So now it should activate the Methalox engine. Okay. So in theory, this will handle our entire launch for us at this point. However, this section here, these two shells here, they are still going to be very, very bespoke to this craft. This is not genericized at all. So let's go ahead and launch that, and let's run it in 10x and just see how it goes. This should put us into basically that same exact position. And yeah, that's gonna do a lot of this. Okay, there it got under control. Perfect. Okay, so we see no problem there. Outer shell has been dropped. We're in the inner shell at this time. Inner shell dropped. Okay, it staged that correctly. And now we're in the Wyvern engine. And of course, the Wyvern engine is going to be a little bit on the slow side. We should probably have a check to deploy the solar panels, especially since this is electrically fed. So that's going to be the next step here. But yeah, this is definitely doing the trick. So our apoapsis is going to be 500 shortly. And there we go, ready for orbital insertion. Now, from what I can tell, there doesn't seem to be any sort of node creation in the setup here. So I don't think we can have it automatically create the maneuver node for us, as far as I can tell. And then activation group, right. I want to activate the solar panels. Set activation group 1 to true. Okay, so at this point, we can do that here. And then that would be that. So we set activation group 1 to true. That should now deploy the solar panels. Then as far as anything else goes here, and yeah, this is just our like global variable here. As far as anything else goes, this seems approximately correct at this point, broadly speaking. Now, we could try to do some sort of a circularization, and at that point, we would get rid of this, set the throttle to 0, and then we would wait until, like this. And then we would, the thing that we would wait until would be the time. Interesting. The time to periapsis, or rather the time to apoapsis is what we're interested in. Orbital apoapsis, time to apoapsis. Okay, so time to apoapsis would need to be something like less. Time to apoapsis is less than, I don't know, maybe like, I don't know how long this burn is going to be. Let's assume it's going to be like 40 seconds. So it would be something like this. We wait until this, and then we would need to, at this point, yeah, this no longer needs to happen. So at this point, we would need to set craft heading to 0. Is there a way to do the just prograde? Presumably there is. Let's see here. That's nav, orbital velocity, blah, 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 blah. Yes. Input throttle. What I'm looking for is just finding orbital prograde. So there's probably a way to do this. Almost certainly. We can just assume that it's going to be 0 when we get there, though. So that should be fine. That's not actually a problem. Then what we need to do is we need to set the throttle to 1. And we need to wait at that point until the periapsis. So we would need to go into orbit, orbital apoapsis. We need a math operation here. So this would be equivalency. Wait until orbital apoapsis, but we need to change this over to periapsis is equivalent to, actually this should be greater than or equal to. So I'm just going to copy this. Orbital apoapsis, so we switch that to periapsis, is greater than or equal to target orbit. Then we set throttle to 0, at which point we can output a message, orbital insertion complete. So we can then say orbital insertion complete. And at that point, we don't really need anything else. We can do everything else manually. So we can save that to craft, and let's give this a go. This should fully put us into orbit, although the timing is going to be a little awkward. So let's just lift this thing right on off. Yeah, it's very strange as it lifts off. That's understood. But now it'll smooth out. Okay. So everything is looking good here. That outer shell was dropped. This time it didn't get rid of 2 of them. Okay, whatever. They got rid of it eventually. Okay, inner shell dropped. And we're going to get rid of that booster momentarily. There we go. We are on this stage now. And we should just continue to burn on upward until we get to 500 kilometer apoapsis. Now, I did not deploy the... okay. Solar panels are 9. Group 9. So that's what's the problem is there. It tried to deploy group 1. I don't know what group 1 is. We need group 9 for that. So we'll bring that back as soon as we can, but for the moment, we can just leave this here. So we're at 500 kilometers, and now it's going to wait. I don't know if we can have it automatically warp. That would be interesting if we could have it automatically warp. Otherwise, it's just going to wait here for like a while. And I don't know how long of burn time this is going to be. Let's come out of here for now and let's see what this burn time would end up being. So at the apoapsis, this burn time is 1.5 minutes. Okay, let's pull this back. So that means 45 seconds. So we need to go into here. We need to change this to 45. And let's also update activation group 1 to, I believe this was activation group 8, like so. Okay, so that should now, in theory, do the trick. We'll save to craft, and let's launch that. This should put us fully into orbit at this point. So we'll put this at 10x, and off it goes, crazily in random directions until it smooths out, which is right about now. There we go. And we're going to be ditching this outer shell. The outer shell doesn't like to ditch fully when we're in 10x, it seems. But there we go. Perfect. There goes the inner shell. And we're going to be ditching the main center core. Wyvern engine is lit up. I'm noticing we did not deploy the solar panels. Did I get that number wrong? Yes, I did. We deployed the landing gear. It is, in fact, 9. That is the solar panels. Let's update that. Okay, I put 8. It's 9. So we need to head in here. This needs to be activation group 9. Save to craft. And let's launch this thing. Okay. 10x speed. We're going to be kind of crazy. Absolutely understood. It'll smooth out now. Perfect. So we're going to ditch all of that. These guys kind of stick. That's fine. They're out of here. Inner shell's gone. And the center core is gone as well. Solar panels deployed. Perfect. It's exactly what I wanted to see there. We could have the solar panels deploy earlier, but I don't think we absolutely have to. So I think that's reasonably fine for the moment. So we'll just continue to burn here for the time being until our apoapsis hits 500, and then let's see if the circularization works correctly. Now, we're still going to be in 10x warp here. It's going to take a little bit to get to that apoapsis, and that's understood. Okay, Apoapsis is 500. And it's going to be about a 1.5 minute burn. So that is understood. At this point, we should have full pitch control. We should be able to put the pitch up here. Yep. So that's no longer getting snapped down, but it will get snapped down when we do the orbital insertion. So that'll be in a few minutes here. Let's bring this right on up and warp over. We need to go until time to apoapsis is 45 seconds. So we're just going to go to... Okay, let's put this in 10x now. And we're at 45 seconds. Ooh. That's interesting. It set our heading, not our pitch. So we need to fix that. That's my fault. I imagine somebody was yelling at me about that one. Yeah, this is not supposed to be heading. This is supposed to be pitch. That was a big issue. Okay, is there any way that we can do any sort of warp control? I don't think so. Maybe in a custom instruction. I'm not sure what the API exposes in the custom functions. I'm sure we'll dive into that at some point. For now, we'll manually warp it. So let's save to craft, and let's give this one more go. Okay, we're going to be crazy. Looks good. I mean, it doesn't, but it's under control. Okay, outer shell goes away, and actually it all detached that time. That's nice. Inner shell is going to go away. And the center core. Perfect. Solar panels deploy, Wyvern engine is lit, and let's just get ourselves accelerated on up in orbital velocity. We'll push that apoapsis right on out. So we could probably be even a little bit more aggressive with our gravity turn if we really wanted to be. Maybe taking it down to like 0.33 instead of 0.5. But there's our apoapsis at 500. So let's just warp this on forward a ways. Okay, this is at 25x. That's fine. We're going to bring it back down to 10x here shortly. Okay, back down to 10x. We should snap to 0 and light up the engine. Yep. And now our periapsis is raising. And we should just burn here until our periapsis hits 500. Okay, so our apoapsis went up a little too high, but that's fine. Our orbital insertion is indeed complete. So that seems to do the trick. It's still very, very specific, right? So it's hyper specific to this craft when we go in and look at this staging logic right here. This section here, that's not hyper specific to this craft, but the staging here is. And we may want to have the fuel control be branched out into its own little sub-function, kind of like the heading management here. We'll see. But for now, this looks good. It is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're probably going to utilize this to launch our craft out to Atraitus is, I believe, the next planet name that we need to visit. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Andy McGard, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.